What up, fellow space cowboy? Gozen here for AnimeUproar, and today we are going to be talking about the best geniuses in anime, aka the most entertaining geniuses in anime. This is not like those lists that list off the smartest anime characters because you can be insanely smart on paper and not be that interesting in practice. For instance, think of Alakazam, who has an IQ of 5,000. Alakazam has a way higher IQ than Shikamaru from Naruto, who has an IQ over 200, but Shikamaru actually uses his brains to come up with impressive and, as a result, entertaining strategies. It is these kinds of intelligent strategies that got me hooked on anime in the first place. When I was a kid, I liked anime like Pokemon, Digimon, and Dragon Ball Z without ever knowing they were anime. However, I might have stopped watching anime if my friend in high school didn't introduce me to the Naruto manga. I still remember reading it in class. I was reading about the Chunin exams and I fell in love with the strategy involved in the battles. It wasn't just about overpowering the other person, it was more about outsmarting them, and I'd never really been exposed to anything like that before. And to be honest, I think it's a huge shame that Naruto ended up becoming so much more powerful than his peers, because that meant that as we progressed in the story, strategy became less important than power. But before Naruto gained godlike power, we had the glorious Chunin exams, and we got to witness Shikamaru in action, who is the first genius I want to talk about. Shikamaru is my favorite character in Naruto. I love how he's relatively weak and lazy, and yet when the chips are down, he can use his mind to find a way to succeed in almost any situation. I love how almost everyone had grand ambitions like becoming Hokage, and in contrast, Shikamaru just wanted to be an average ninja making an average living. He wanted to marry a regular girl who's not super pretty or ugly, have 2 kids, a girl and then a boy. He wanted to retire when his kid successfully became ninja, and then just spend the rest of his days playing shogi. He dreamed of a carefree and leisurely retirement. Shikamaru always stood out because of his intelligence and different view of the world. It also helps that he's so good at shogi because we know that anyone good at shogi or chess is a complete boss. And I'm totally not just saying that because I love playing chess and watching the shogi based anime March Comes In Like a Lion. Anyways, even after just learning to play the game, Shikamaru can beat his sensei Asuma at shogi. But what's really interesting to me is how Shikamaru uses his brains to come up with strategies in battle. Let's take a look at his fight against Kin Tsuchi during the Chunin exams. From the beginning, his opponent underestimates him. She calls his shadow technique stupid. If you didn't know, Shikamaru starts at a disadvantage because she knows Shikamaru's abilities and he doesn't know hers. Shikamaru ends up using her needle string attacks to catch her in his shadow jutsu. That's a good first step, but as his opponent points out, and I quote, "While we're locked into this mimicry, any injury done to me will hurt you too." So it seems like Shikamaru cannot really take her out without taking himself out. Then we get the great and unexpected finale. It appears like Shikamaru is going to make her and him take damage from shuriken until one of them is no longer fit for battle, but he dodges last minute. You might think that would mean they both simply avoided the attack, but Shikamaru was using the terrain to his advantage. His opponent was close to the wall, and when he threw his head back, her head hit hard into the wall, taking her out of commission. What's so entertaining about this match is that Shikamaru's opponent never saw what was coming. She never saw the big picture. She continually underestimated Shikamaru, talking as if her victory was assured. In contrast, Shikamaru acted like he didn't know what was going on, even though he was several steps ahead of her the entire time. He wasn't really stronger than his opponent, but he outsmarted her. He was planning ahead, and she unknowingly followed along as he dictated the direction of the match. Even when he seemingly loses, Shikamaru wins. During his fight with Temari, we get to witness more of Shikamaru's intellect. He says he doesn't really care whether he becomes a Chunin or not, but he can't stand the idea of losing to a girl. He quickly uses his kunai in an unconventional way. In order to dodge Temari's attack, he sticks his kunai into the wall and stands on top of them to avoid any damage. Instead of being fired up as most people are, he just wishes he wasn't fighting a girl, and he envies the clouds for being so free. This totally reminds me of when I had to write a bunch of essays and take a bunch of exams in university, and I envied the geese I saw because they were free to bathe in the sun, swim in the water, enjoy the moment, and not worry about any of that human stuff. Another reason I can relate to Shikamaru. Anyways, Shikamaru ends up taking the fight more or less seriously. He tries to capture Temari with his shadow, but she dodges it and notices there is a limit to how much his shadow can stretch across a sunlit area. Other shadows add to that distance, but in a sunlit area, it seems he can only extend 15 meters and 32 centimeters. Then Shikamaru takes a pose he takes when he's stuck and needs to plot his strategy. I love the fact that Shikamaru drops everything and just begins to meditate in the middle of battle. Soon enough, Shikamaru has a plan. He tries to get her again with his shadow. He bought time so that the shadow in the arena would be bigger, and he could use his shadow beyond the area that Temari marked off as the shadow's limit. Yet she's quick enough to dodge it again. Then Shikamaru uses his shirt, headband, and kunai to create a kind of parachute that creates a shadow on the field and extends his shadow. By getting Temari to focus on the ground, he kept her from noticing the parachute. Temari, being a good strategist herself, manages to still anticipate and dodge Shikamaru's shadow. However, as Kurenai mentions, Shikamaru was steps ahead the whole time. The larger arena shadow, the parachute, they were just used as distractions, so that Shikamaru could push Temari closer to the hole that Naruto created during the last match. He used the tunnel between the two holes to extend his shadow and get Temari, while she was distracted by his other shadow. He won the game of shadow tag, but Shikamaru gives up the match. He planned out about 200 more moves, but his shadow possession is about to run out cause he's used too much chakra, so he's out of time. Yet, most experienced people don't see Shikamaru's loss as a weakness. They praise his ability to keep a calm head, and they deduce that if Shikamaru had a team, as Ninja would during a mission, he would have easily won. He has proven that he has the disposition of a natural leader, and thus, he is the only one who becomes a Chunin. Instead of getting the anticipated Sasuke and Gaara fight after Naruto's, we had to watch Shikamaru and Temari instead. Everyone in the audience and some of the readers too were probably upset at first. However, Shikamaru managed to make this side fight one of the most interesting ones in the show, and by the end of it, I was totally satisfied with it. I don't think anyone else ever lost in such a victorious way. Temari went from being frightened that he captured her, to shocked that he gave up, to impressed that he managed to outsmart her. In contrast, Shikamaru was completely cool-headed, even as he forfeited the match and even ended up being promoted to Chunin, while no one else did, including Temari. Forfeiting the match was a necessary sacrifice so that he could get the checkmate, aka become a Chunin, which was the whole point of the Chunin exams. It is no wonder that Temari caught feelings for this lazy genius. Next, let's talk about Light from Death Note, a smart student who finds a notebook of death. There are a bunch of rules surrounding the Death Note, but the main idea is that he can kill people if he writes their names in the Death Note while he pictures their face in his mind. While Light is using the Death Note to try and become the god of a new and ideal world, L, secretly the number 1, number 2, and number 3 detective in the world, is trying to catch him. I watched Death Note soon after I got into Naruto, and I was hooked on anime ever since. The intellectual battle between Light and L in Death Note blew me away when I first watched it in a way that nothing else I watched before or since ever did. I'll talk about L in another video, if you guys want a part 2 to this one. But I want to cover Light in this one because I sometimes feel like he gets less love compared to L. By the way, if you guys do want a part 2, make sure to smash that like button and leave a comment listing some of your favorite geniuses in anime that you'd like me to cover. But back to Light. It was sometimes the little things that really impressed me and stuck with me. I absolutely loved how he tended to be so careful with the things he did, especially earlier on in the series. Death Note takes a seemingly mundane act and makes it as epic as any battle shonen. Light's explanation of how he knew someone who wasn't his family had been in his room was absolutely fascinating to me at the time. You see, when he closes his doorknob straightens up. He usually keeps his doorknob slightly down so that he'll know if someone enters his room, because when he comes back, it will be back to its straight position. This is cool on its own, but Light takes it a step further. Really, the doorknob is just a red herring. It's there to mislead anyone who enters his room. He also keeps some pencil lead on the door hinge, so if someone goes in, that pencil lead will break. Because of this broken pencil lead, he knows that not only did someone enter his room, it also had to be someone who wasn't a family member, since his family members wouldn't go out of their way to return the door hinge to a slightly down position. He uses this little trick to figure out that his room is probably bugged and knows immediately not to speak to Ryuk. Yet, he doesn't lose his cool for even a second. You'd have no idea if you were watching him that Light made such a huge discovery. Just to give you a sense of how into Death Note I was at the time, A 13-year-old me put pencil lead on my door hinge for a little bit, until I realized that no one has any reason to enter my room. Then there's the famous potato chip eating scene. This has got to be one of the most epic moments in anime period. Keep in mind, Light needs to study while he's secretly killing people and acting like a quote-unquote normal teenager, because if his grades drop, people will start to get suspicious. First off, I just want to say I appreciate this. Yes, Light is like always at the top of his class, but it's not some BS where he's just super smart and he never has to study. The Death Note creators make it clear that yes, Light is smart, but he's realistically smart. He's talented, but he studies a lot as well, and that's how he gets good marks. As someone who also got good marks from high school through to my master's degree, I appreciate the fact that the creators recognize that it does take time and work to produce good grades. Perhaps it's a tiny detail, but it was definitely not lost on me. So while Light is making sure he studies, sleeps, looks put together, tries to look normal, and tries to avoid slipping up while he's under constant surveillance in his own home, the potato chip scene takes place. L suspects that Light may be Kira, and he's watching him closely. Light knows this. So, how can he make it look like he's not Kira? Well, one way is to kill off criminals whose images appeared on live TV while Light was clearly not watching TV. So, Light turns off the TV and studies. However, he's eating chips as he does it. And unbeknownst to L, there's a little portable TV in the bag of chips. Of course, Light, knowing where the cameras are, has made it so that the cameras would not be able to see what's actually in the bag. He appears to be just eating chips, but he's actually using a small piece of the Death Note and a small pencil inside of the bag to write the names of the criminals showing up on the small portable TV screen. All the while, dramatic music is playing in the background, making the scene feel epic and intense. And in fact, it is epic and intense. To L and Light's dad, it looks like Light is just studying and eating chips while Kira is killing criminals. But in reality, Light is killing those people. When Light says, "I'll take a potato chip and eat it," it's one of the most thrilling lines of the series. On the one hand, it seems like he's just eating a potato chip, but on the other hand, he's murdering people in front of his rival L's very eyes. And he's completely getting away with it. For someone who has an ego as big as Light's, this is the height of satisfaction. He's outsmarting his rival, he's winning the most important battle of his life while eating potato chips. Imagine you were in a fight against the best fighter in the world, and you were eating potato chips and still kicking his butt. That's how Light feels right now. Then he acts normal, throws out the chip bag with the expensive portable TV, and eventually watches it get destroyed by the garbage truck. The evidence that he's killed anyone is completely gone. He managed to pull off murder in front of the number 1, number 2, and number 3 detective in the world, and he got away with it. There are many more moments of Light's brilliance, but I wanted to focus on how tampering with a door and eating potato chips can become insanely interesting, more interesting than a life or death physical battle when done right. That's the power of a well-written genius. Lastly, I want to talk about Lelouch from Code Geass. Long story short, Lelouch is a rebel genius trying to take down a corrupt government using his superpower, which takes the form of a Geass. His Geass, if he can make direct eye contact, allows him to command people to do anything, but it only works once. So, as you can see, there are limitations, as with the Death Note. Without Lelouch's brains, his Geass would not be as useful or as entertaining. Lelouch is extremely good at chess, and that's part of the reason Lelouch was my favorite anime character after I first watched Code Geass. It was another anime that hooked me over the course of the first few episodes. But what especially stuck with me were his battles against Mao, another Geass user. You see, Mao is Lelouch's kryptonite. Lelouch can practically beat anyone in chess and outsmart them in battle by thinking several moves ahead. Not to mention, he has the benefit of his Geass power. Except this gets complicated when Mao enters the equation. Mao can read Lelouch's mind, so it seems Lelouch can no longer think several moves ahead of his opponent. As far ahead as he plans, Mao can follow his thought process and beat him, since he always knows what's coming. Mao's powers can work beyond a certain distance, but when they are sitting down together playing chess, Lelouch doesn't stand a chance. When Mao reveals that he knows C2, who is Lelouch's much more attractive Ryuk, Lelouch instantly comes up with 14 possible identities for Mao, and one of them is right. Mao is a Geass user who previously had contact with C2. He is obsessed with C2 and wants her all to himself. Despite the cards being stacked against him, Lelouch figures out a way to beat Mao not once, but twice. And both times, I loved how Lelouch managed to outsmart Mao. In the first case, Mao kidnaps C2 and takes her to an amusement park. Now, Lelouch knows that if he just gets within a certain range of Mao, Mao will be able to read his thoughts and see him coming, so he comes up with a plan. He records himself talking to Mao and plays the recordings on the amusement park screens. As Lelouch explains to Mao later, Mao's thoughts are far too simple because he uses his mind reading as a crutch. Thus, more or less, Lelouch was able to predict what Mao would say and keep him from discovering that it was just a recording. While Mao was distracted by what he mistook to be Lelouch's livestream, Lelouch Geassed a bunch of cops and brought them to take out Mao. Mao needs to concentrate to increase his range of mind reading, so because Mao was distracted by the recording, he didn't see it coming. Hence, Lelouch found a way to turn Mao's Geass against him. As a cherry on top of the cake, Lelouch even predicted that Mao would try to reveal that Lelouch is zero after he lost, and so, he made that the signal for the cops to shoot him. Somehow, Mao survives. Apparently, Lelouch told the cops to shoot him rather than kill him. So through Britannian medical science, Mao comes back to fight in the next episode. Is it pretty unrealistic that Lelouch would make such a mistake and that Mao would be fine after so many gunshots? Yeah, it is. But I'm not even mad because of how entertaining the second battle is. I even preferred it to the first. Mao comes back smarter and more cautious because he has more experience fighting against Lelouch now. If you know anything about Lelouch, you know that his little sister Natalie is the single most important person in his life. His whole goal of creating a more just world sprang from his love for her. So what does Mao do? He kidnaps her this time. This time, Lelouch's everything is on the line. Mao put Nonali close to a bomb. If he wins a chess match against Lelouch, the bomb will go off, and if Lelouch wins, the bomb will be disarmed. So, in order to win, Lelouch needs to do the impossible. Win a chess match against someone who can read his every thought. This part of the series is insanely intense. Lelouch is losing. He begs for Nonali's life. He admits that he lost. He means it too, because if he didn't, Mao would be able to tell. We've never seen Lelouch so worried and utterly defeated, but Mao has no mercy. He goes to throw Lelouch's final chess piece into the mechanism that will detonate the bomb and kill Nonali. Lelouch's whole face contorts and he screams out. We get to see what he acts like when he's lost everything important to him. However, Lelouch was actually one step ahead of Mao again, even though he didn't even know it at the time. Nonali is fine and Suzaku comes in, dodges some bullets like it's nothing, and disarms Mao. Then Lelouch realizes that he gave Suzaku instructions and used his Geass power on himself using a mirror so he'd forget. Thus, he came up with the plan that would defeat Mao and then erased his memories so he, and by extension Mao, wouldn't know about the backup plan. Sometimes Code Geass sacrifices realism for entertainment, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's one of my favorite anime of all time, and if you haven't, I strongly suggest that you watch it. Watching Lelouch's intelligent strategies play out alone makes it a show worth binging. And although Lelouch doesn't always act as intelligent and cautious as Light, and has no comparable L counterpart, I do prefer his character arc to Light's. And that is it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to smash that like button to let me know. If you haven't, be sure to subscribe, and this is vital, ring that notification bell for more videos like this one. Let me know in the comments if you want to see a part 2 to this video, and let me know who your favorite genius in anime is and which of their genius moments really stood out to you. A big thank you goes out to our patrons over on Patreon who help make videos like this one possible. I especially want to thank our Pro Hero tier patrons, the one and only Gilgamesh, Baby Ray, Nothing But a Fan, Jason Wilson, King Zeldris, and Angel Cruz. And are the 1 tier patrons the ones who stand atop all clans: A17 FFDP, Steven Ingrata, Alola and Autem, Matty Mac 239, Makoto Kun, and Keelon. And the patrons who transcend greatness itself: Reagan Harrison and Lord Nuxanor. the chosen few who have been acknowledged by Lord Twigo himself. If you enjoy our work, you can support more of it by going over to patreon.com/AnimeUproar and becoming a patron today for as little as $1. If you do so, you'll get your name featured in future videos alongside these geniuses right here, and you'll even get access to our private patron-only Discord. So check out patreon.com/AnimeUproar, link in the description if you're interested. And until next time, see you, Space Cowboy.